Okay, so here we are. And last week I talked a little bit about the 7 steps in the program, and last week was really about step one, setting up for the journey into deep resilience, towards deep resilience, and also setting out on that journey. And it was really a kind of an introduction of the importance of setting our intention, our motivation, just how valuable that is. And then it was very much about setting up practices, which are sort of foundational practices from our perspective for deep resilience. And one of them is nature connection, a deep connection with the natural world. And one of the kind of primary ways we're encouraging you to do that is through the sit spot experience. And I talked a little bit last week about setting up, finding a sit spot, setting up a sit spot, how to do the sit spot practice, sense meditation. And that meditation last week was sense meditation. So that's really what we focused on last week. And again, as I say, the practices that we highlighted were intention, sit spot, sense meditation, and also a practice of web repair, of kind of recognizing the tattered web of life that we're all part of, and the value of us just taking one step to repair one thread in that web, just doing that consciously. So that was where we began last week, and tonight we're going on to step 2 in this process, which is awakening the heart, or opening up a field of care. And we're going to say more what we mean about that as we go along. But I just wanted to give you an outline of, after the talk, we'll have a practice, a field of care practice introduced by Radley this evening. And at the end of the session, have some time for feedback and question and answers if you have them. For those of you that weren't here last week, I just want to kind of just talk again about this, what I found quite valuable Celtic cosmology, as a way of looking at how we're approaching this. And from a Celtic perspective, there really are 3 realms that we inhabit all at once, but part of our being in our body and in our minds, but also part of being in our world. And this idea that there are these 3 dimensions that are a bit like 3 concentric circles. And the outer circle is called Cruana, and the middle circle is called Altar, and the central core is Njart. And so what do we mean by these? What's understood by these 3 different terms? Well, the outer circle is talking about the everyday phenomenological experience of our being in the world, what's sometimes referred to as relative reality. It's a world of dualism, of good and bad, of hot and cold, of night and day. It's a world where the ego, that executive part of our psyche, likes to be in charge and is in charge for the most part. It's the world of consciousness. So that is the outer circle. Then the middle circle, or the kind of the middle world, is the world of Altar, is the world of the unconscious, the world of dreams and visions, a world where there's a sense of ego, but the ego is not in charge, as in a dream, as we all experience. The world of the shadow, of what Jung calls the shadow. And then the central core in this cosmology is Njart, which is the Gaelic or Irish word for no thing, but not no thing in the sense of nihilism, but no thing in the sense of nothing separate. And it's both an emptiness of separateness, but also a fullness of all potentiality. It's a world of non-duality. It's the world that's sometimes referred to as ultimate reality, understood and experienced in different ways and interpreted by various spiritual traditions in different ways. That's the world of Nyart. And how does that relate to self-care? Well, again, this is kind of recapping from last week, but this was an image I shared that in a way pulls together those three worlds: the outer world of Cruana, the forest, the circular forest, the middle world of Altar, the roots, the intertwining roots just under the surface, but also the deeper roots going down and down, and then at the central core of Nyart. And how it relates to self-care is that we're using a language of self-care 1, self-care 1.5, and self-care 2.0. And so self-care 1.0 is really about care of what's above ground. It's looking after the trees. It's looking after what's tangible and taking care of what's tangible. And it's often understood in terms of looking after one tree, the one tree that we are, hopefully with a sense of forest, but really that sense of individuality. Self-care 1.5 adds in a sort of psychological dimension. And it's really taking care not just of what's on the surface, but also what's below ground. So Cruana and Altar, if you like, the tangible and the intangible. Again, usually understood in terms of us as individuals. That's why it's called self-care. It's kind of taking care of ourselves. Self-care 2.0 really brings in, and in fact is very much rooted in that central core of Nyart. And it's really also a sense of the individual, yes, but the individual tree as being part of the forest, and its care of the whole. And so really what distinguishes Self-Care 2.0, and really which is the focus of this program in many ways, and what makes it, in our view, a deep resilience, as opposed to just resilience, not just resilience, but kind of deep resilience as opposed to regular resilience, if you like, is the connection to this deep central core, which again, from different spiritual perspectives, may come with no name, just a sense of what's deepest, the most profound depths of the psyche, of our experience of being, or it may come with a name, like God, or Allah, or Yahweh, or Spirit, or the sacred, or Buddha nature, or the groundless ground, as Meister Eckhart called it, or the great mystery, as Native Americans refer to. So, whatever we call it, it's what we're interested in this program is how we can tap into this, how we can experience this, how we can over time become rooted in this, so that we're actually coming to the world from this place, and not just from our surface selves. And in some ways, is that kind of a question we've been thinking about is Nyart heart? Is that what we're talking about? Not heart in the sense of the pump, the physical pump that pumps the blood in our bodies, but heart in an energetic sense. And again, the heart is, in many spiritual traditions, is seen as the core, the source. And I think a way I and we see heart is it's that intersection point between us as individuals and the more, between the immanent and the transcendent, if you like. It's between the vertical and the horizontal between kairos and chronos. So it's the heart as the link to more. And that the deep resilience journey, as in how realistic is it to really be rooted in this, in the heart, in Nyart, in the core, in the source. It may sound daunting, but we really want to encourage you to think of it more as a process of remembering what's already there, that it's our deepest innate nature. It may be clouded over, we may be disconnected from it, but it's already there. It's already here. And so how can we root into and make this our basis of operation? And then coming back to our world rooted in this, in this deeper ground, in an ever-widening circle of compassion. So all of that kind of recapping on last week, but leading into this week and asking the question, why do we really begin the process, as we are here, with awakening the heart? Does it really matter that much? And if it does, why does it matter? And if it matters, if we agree it matters, how do we actually do this? How do we actually awaken the heart? And our whole program is really trying to get beyond the conceptual to, the conceptual is helpful maybe in pointing us in a particular direction. Images are helpful in, picture's worth 1,000 words, or a good picture or an image. But it's really about the experience of this. And so how do we do this? Well, we want to touch on 2 practices tonight that help us to do this. The first of which is the practice of gratitude. Gratitude practice can be a heart opening or a heart awakening practice. And we've learned a lot about gratitude as a practice from our teacher, mentor, and friend, Joanna Macy, who you see here. Joanna, for those of you who don't know, is now in her mid-late 90s, but she is fierce bodhisattva, really has been, acting on behalf of the world as a anti-nuclear activist, as an environmental activist, as a social justice activist, and leading all through her working life this past 50 plus years, a process that she calls the work that reconnects. And the work that reconnects is really a process of deep resilience. As I said earlier, we'll have in our resource section links to other groups that are doing deep resilience work and offering programs in deep resilience, their own programs in deep resilience. And Radley and I have learned so much from Joanna and so much from the spiral of the work that reconnects. And so, as you can see here with this dandelion plant, there are 4 parts to it. And the first, the roots of the plant, is gratitude. It begins with gratitude. The spiral begins with gratitude, rooting in gratitude. Because when we do that, and I'll say more about this in a moment, it allows us to turn towards and to be with our pain for the world. And when we can be with our pain for the world and not be frightened of it, but just continue to breathe, we realize that we're feeling the pain we feel when we look at what's happening in our world. We realize that we're feeling that because of how deeply connected we are and how deeply we care. And we come into that sense of connection and care. And when we're in that sense of connection and care, it shifts our perspective. And so we see that we're in a world of interconnection, a world of interbeing, rather than a world of billiard balls colliding one with the other. We see with new eyes. And when we really have this shift in perspective, we know what's important and we know what we need to do. And so we go forth back into the world. So that's the spiral. That's the spiral of the work that reconnects. And here's what Joanna says about it. And this is really kind of answering the question, why do we begin by awakening the heart? And gratitude is a practice that can do that. And she says, we begin because gratitude roots us in our hearts. And just that being rooted in the heart, or in Nyart, in the more, allows us to face our pain with, and that's why we're doing it this way too. Like the spiral of the reconnects, our first step is a step of awakening the heart. Gratitude practice is one way to do that, because when we're rooted in the heart, we can face whatever comes our way with less fear. And so just a couple of words about gratitude is first to say that we're not talking about, what should we be grateful for? As my native American elder and friend Wolf Wapipo says, it's not gratitude as a should, but gratitude as a could. It's about recognizing that in every moment we have a choice about what we attend to, what we pay attention to. And even in the darkest times, like even in the darkest tapestry, if our life is a tapestry and we're in a very dark phase of that tapestry, well, even in that moment, there may be a golden thread, maybe just a single golden thread. But the practice of gratitude is about attending to that golden thread. And then as we do that, noticing how this actually feels in our body when we attend to that golden thread. For me, this would be this evening when I took Lucy for a walk earlier, and I went down to the little forest by the Natural History Museum, just walking through the incredible beauty under the trees and just seeing so much sort of green grass after the rain, and the water in the creek and the sun, at that stage in the evening, just catching the water and the sparkle. And just that when I remembered that, so that's a moment that I feel grateful for in my day. But then I gently let go of the memory, and I bring my awareness back to how that actually makes me feel in my body and in my heart. And then I allow myself to feel that, and I allow that feeling to draw me into oneness with it. So that's gratitude practice. Noticing what we're grateful for, noticing how that makes us feel in our body, allowing ourselves to feel that, allowing that feeling to draw us into oneness with it, and for just a few moments even, just resting in that. And so I just very briefly want to invite you to try this, okay? And then I'll be handing over to Radley for the second practice of the evening. So I invite you just to find your posture. If you're sitting on a chair, your feet on the ground, your straight back, soft shoulders, soft belly. It's just going to be about 3 or 4 minutes, this practice. Just allow your awareness to drop down into your body. Allow your thinking mind to drop down into your body. And allow your body to drop down into the earth, into the connections between your feet and the ground, your seat and the chair. Into those sensations of firmness, solidity. Just feeling the weight of your body. Noticing how the weight of your body brings you back to earth, into a sense of being held. And for a moment, and with the exhale, just surrender your muscles to gravity. Relaxing back into that sense of being held. Now, when you're ready, allow your awareness to rise up and fill the whole space of your body. And as you're mindfully aware within your body, I invite you to call to mind something in your day to day that you feel grateful for. So just see if something comes. You think back on your day. It may have been a challenging day, it may have been a hard day. There may have been a moment in the day that comes to mind, a moment that you remember, something that made you feel happy, something that made you feel good, something that you feel grateful for. Just see what comes to mind. And for just a few moments, just allow that memory to fill itself in. Just remembering that golden moment in your day. Now, I invite you to gently let go of the memory, of the details, of the story, to allow your awareness to come back into your body, to notice how that felt sense of gratitude feels in your body. Notice your heart sense, how your heart feels. Just for a moment or two, just allow yourself to feel what you're feeling. And allow this feeling of gratitude to draw you into oneness with it. So that this feeling is doing the knowing and the meditating. And simply let everything be just as it is. So thank you. And I'd like to move on now to the second practice that we wanted to introduce this evening as a way of opening up the field of care, of another way of saying opening up the heart, coming into that rootedness in the heart. And we're going to be talking and introducing the field of care practice, which we've learned from John McCransky. So, Radley, if you'd like to unmute yourself, I hand over to you at this point.
And I will turn the background light on. 1 second. All right. And maybe before I start, I have to say that actually, I want you to do one more thing, Michael.
Uh-huh.
For those people who weren't here last week, and I know there are a few, can you just say 1 or 2 sentences about the sit spot practice?
Um, why don't I do that in our discussion if folks
Okay.
would like that? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And just to say that I do go into that in some detail in last week's talk, which is posted online. So if anybody's joining for the first time tonight, that there's a description of what we mean by the sit spot practice, how to find your sit spot, and how to make
Mhm.
that a practice. So that's there for you. Yeah.
Right. So maybe the basic idea is that we can touch into Nyard, into this deep field of awareness, either through uh, through nature, because nature is a little bit it's awareness. You know, it's one way of one opening door to awareness. And there's meditation, and there are probably other doors too, like athletics or making love or music or art. So I just wanted to mention that. But Michael had just a moment ago the uh, the picture of my teacher John McCransky, who I really, when I had the privilege to have quite a few wonderful teachers, and he's somebody who has been inspiring me, especially in the recent years. He's a professor at Boston University and is retired now, but has since the 70s, when he was with the Peace Corps in India, followed a Tibetan practice. I think is Jewish, teaching at a Catholic university and following a Tibetan practice. So he covers a lot of bases. And what I learned since I, studied mindfulness, that mindfulness is quite often seen, especially the field of awareness, of wisdom, which we tap into, is often kind of seen as a lofty, a spacious, um, kind of field of wisdom. Even when I read Meister Eckhart, it's often described like that. And what John McCransky kind of speaks about a lot is that this field of awareness also has the aspects of warmth, of love. And I think the other one who really talked about that is Ram Dass. He called it loving awareness, which I think Jack Cornfield has kind of then taken over from Ram Dass. But the question is, how can we feel not only the spacious, the lofty, the clear and wise side of awareness, but how can we feel this uh, this warmth, this love, this care side of loving awareness, which is also there, and which I think in the world nowadays we need especially a lot. Man, I have to say, I just came back last week from Europe, back to my home here in America, and and not just since then, but it has been hard. And I feel I need this deeper ground, dipping into the deeper ground, at least several times a day, or as often as I can, to not feel discouraged, not to feel disheartened, or maybe to feel that there is a space of care around my sorrow. It's not to get rid of the sorrow, but to have hold it in a wider um, uh, field of warmth. And then, like with gratitude, with the gratitude practice that Michael talked about, then we can have the strength, the courage, the resilience, the deep resilience to feel what we feel without feeling completely overwhelmed. Michael, will I do the next picture or will you do it?
Well, I can do it if you like. You tell me, you know.
Oh, I can do it too. Okay. I didn't know. Okay, so the question is, how can we dip into this root in ourselves, this nyat, in the heart, in the ground of being, um, from that, and if we can dip down into that perspective, we can be with what comes towards us in life without feeling disheartened. Buddhist philosophy, and it might not be only Buddhist philosophy, talks about the two truths, which are both true. It's not just one truth, it's two truths. On the there are the surface events of our lives, our personal consciousness, our personal awareness, and there's the depth of the groundless ground. And our heart is the place from where we can contact both, we can feel both. And the example that Jack Cornfield always gave for this is that light can be both seen as a particle and a wave. It's not either this or that. If we look this way, it's a particle. If we look that way, it's a wave. And so with our life, we can be aware with our deep, deep self. We can be aware that everything is interconnected and that underneath everything is the ground of love and wisdom. But we can also, read the newspaper and feel great sorrow with what's happening in life. And I guess the trick is to learn to hold both, not to be just in one or the other. And the heart connects us. The heart is such an interesting thing. I think Cynthia Bourgeau, which some of you may still remember from La Casa de Maria, she called the heart the organ of psycho-spiritual connection. I think it's more than that. It's a physical, energetic, magnetic, spiritual, and emotional organ of connection. It brings all these different levels together. So so there are different names for this field of care or this groundless ground, which might be Rigpa, or meaning that everything is connected. And when we relate to our environment from this perspective, we do so with less effort, less fear, more spaciousness and ease. I have to say, for me, the day usually starts like this. When I first wake up, I often feel somehow I'm right in touch with the pain of the world, even before I look at the news. no devices. It's just, oh, I just feel it. And then when I meditate, and I do meditate for quite a while, somehow I'm able to sink underneath that cloud into a space where there is much less fear and less effort and more spaciousness and ease. And then I can reemerge and be with my clients, maybe listen to what's going on in the world, be with my children, and I'm not so overwhelmed. And honestly, when I go then back in the afternoon and hopefully have time to take our doggies for a walk, I can dip back in to this uh, interdependent nature of life. The space below all the fear and sorrow that's also there. Or I might still feel the fear and sorrow, but it's now held in a wider space. Oops, I'm trying to get to the next picture.
I
I
went
have,
to the next picture, really. This is the
all
next
right.
picture.
Okay. So the groundless ground, or nard, as you might want to call it, has qualities of wisdom, of knowing, of limitless, boundlessness, and changelessness. It just is. But there's also qualities of love, of warmth, of care. And so that's why Ram Dass, in his great wisdom, called it loving awareness.
Okay, Radley, I went on.
Okay. So, as I said, we need these qualities, especially in these times: the warmth, the kindness, the care, the compassion. And these are also innate qualities of this deepest ground. Because I think if we practice spirituality just as something that connects us to wisdom, it could make us too detached and kind of aloof. And I actually think sometimes spiritual practice is misunderstood as mine, there is a good detachment and a bad detachment. If it's aloofness, we don't care, then it's not good. And when we have more spaciousness around ourselves and therefore more equanimity, then it's good. So we need these different qualities in our lives, and right now, especially warmth, kindness, care, compassion, the openness of the heart. So, John McCronkey from Boston College, or from, I guess, studying with teachers in Nepal for 50 years, he developed one way, which is he developed, basically adjusted from the Tibetan practices he learned from his teachers in Nepal. He kind of says it's important to first bring up a moment of care that we remember, recalling a moment of warmth, of care, a moment when we felt seen, loved, taken care of. And then let go of that memory and just feel the felt sense of that care, of this warmth, as if this warmth was infusing every cell of our being, and maybe we even feel it around us. And let's go to the next picture, please. And so we can dip into and touch into this field of care aspect of the deepest ground, of the deepest ground of being. And then when thoughts and feelings arise, as they always do, or images or memories, we can just allow them to be there without holding on or pushing away, and simply allowing them all space. Then they can relax and they can slowly untangle and settle, so that a frightened and tight sense of self can loosen and give way to openness and warmth of the deepest realms of being. In some ways, some of you might know emptiness of self practices, and this is one way of doing it. It's a way of um, relaxing, deepening into this field of care aspect of the groundless ground, and then the sorrow or the worry or the fear or the frustration kind of becomes less strong and relaxes and untangles and kind of becomes metabolized, reintegrated into the groundless ground of being. And then something else happens. And I thought I might just do a little field of care practice with you. Maybe let's see what is our time. Yeah, so I maybe should not make it longer than 7, 8 minutes. Okay, all right. Let yourself settle into the sensations in your body. Feel the touch between your body and the chair, the ground. Let your awareness drop from thinking mind down into your body as a whole. Maybe dropping from thinking forehead mind through your face and jaw, down your throat, filling your shoulders and chest and heart. Awareness filling your arms and hands. Dropping down into your belly and the base of your body, your legs and feet, until your whole body is filled with awareness. Feeling awareness resting in body, as body, and around you. Being drawn into the depth of body sensation. Then you might feel and remember a moment of care. Let's just see what moment of care wants to visit you right now. Might be a moment of care from your childhood, when somebody really loved you or saw you for who you are. Maybe just for a moment of care. Maybe a mentor, maybe a teacher, a therapist, maybe an animal. Maybe you felt really loved and seen by a soft animal. Or you felt really loved and at home in the presence of a tree. Just for a moment, allow yourself to feel deeply the felt sense of this moment of care. And let go of the literalness of this memory. Just allow yourself to feel that feeling of warmth, of spaciousness, this quality of loving awareness. This quality of being suffused by and held by this field of care, limitless, boundless, always there. Just a moment of remembering away. Just a moment of remembering away. If there are thoughts or feelings or a bit of heartache, just let this be held. Just be there in this limitless, boundless, in the warmth of that field of care. Let that feeling of worry or fear or maybe happiness or maybe sadness, let it just be there. Held in this vast space of warmth. Relaxing, untangling, being metabolized, integrated, changing into something else. And that field of care remains. Only a moment of remembering away.
Thank you, Rodalie. Um, okay, so we just have a few minutes before we finish, and would just love to hear if anybody would like to share anything from your experience, or if you've got any kind of reflections or comments or questions. We'd love to hear from you. Please, Miranda. Yeah, just unmute yourself. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's, yeah, it's, you can't unmute yourself. No.
Oh,
Ah,
no, you're unmuted.
Oh, there
okay.
you go. There you go.
I wanted to express appreciation for that framing of the thoughts and feelings that arise in the larger field of awareness, that then rather than trying to push things away or do something that feels more forced, to make space and to allow for that untangling. That's a very, very helpful
Mhm.
reframe for me.
Yeah, you might be interested to hear that uh, John McCransky also works a lot with a psychologist, Paul Condon, who works a lot with attachment theory.
Mm.
And you know how children can relax when they feel safe, when they feel heard, when they feel accepted, even with their difficult feelings. So it's the same with the field of care, and I actually find it quite wonderful because not everybody has wonderful parents, right? And many of us had difficult childhoods, and I find personally quite wonderful to have this relationship with actually a field of warmth that is always already there. And it doesn't exclude human interaction, but it's also there.
And staying with that theme of attachment, working with attachment injuries with an adult, how
Yeah.
it's not about asking them to let go the defenses or let go the pain, but
Mm-mm.
more making space for it and healing that through connection.
Mm.
So that's that.
Yeah.
that-
Yeah, if you like or ever likes, I can send you the links to that where you can find that.
Thank you, Rodley.
Yeah.
Thank you, Miranda. Susanna, please.
Yes, I would appreciate that link as well. But I just thought that was a lovely meditation and so easy to access the field of care. And one category you left off was grandchildren. And
Yeah.
so that was a easy ticket for me to get there. And so thank you very much.
Well, if you want more of that, the Saturday 1 to 4 at Santa Barbara Middle School or online. But we'll do more of that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, Gwen.
I don't know. Am I still muted?
No, we can hear you.
Okay, because I don't know how to Well, I had a problem in that Radele, you'd talk about some picture or slide. I never saw anything except you. I saw when Michael did his PowerPoint, I saw whatever that was. But when you were doing yours and you mentioned different things, for some reason I wasn't finding it. So I don't know if I have done this, made a mistake
Oh,
somehow.
doing the meditation or when I was talking?
When you were talking, I didn't see
Wa-
anything but you.
Was that true for others?
I saw the slide,
Okay. Okay.
Good.
but I don't know why. I didn't do any setting thing. It just,
Yeah.
came.
Yeah. The screen was still being shared, so I don't know how that happened, Gwen. Yeah,
How
that was,
about we send you the recording?
yeah, we'll
Well,
do.
I loved both meditations, both Michael's and Radley's, and it was, I'm still confused about the field of care or whatever, but I really enjoyed just trying to drop into both of those experiences.
Yeah. And don't get too hung up, or we shouldn't, all of us, me, shouldn't get too hung up on a word. It's more, trying to make the point like Ram Dass's loving awareness.
Right.
Awareness isn't just male. Awareness has a very, and many men are very warm, but it has all these qualities. And maybe because many monks were male, they described it more with male attributes, whether they were Buddhist monks or Christian monks or whatever they were. So I think we have to bring in accentuate the qualities that are more usually attributed
Mm.
to the feminine, even though it's unisex.
Are there any other hands? We're probably almost out of time for tonight, but
I
anybody else
kind
have?
of see a hand in Jane. Is there a hand in Jane? No.
Okay. Um, okay. So, thank you. I'm just quickly going to go back to a last, and hopefully you'll all see this, but just to, before we close, just to say that the next 2 Wednesdays. So this is very much a kind of the core, the program is very much about, yeah, some talks about the different steps, but then very much introducing practices and encouraging you to follow through on those practices and then have the opportunity a couple of Wednesdays a month to actually really have discussion on those practices, how they're going for you. We'll probably include meditations like we did tonight or short little practices. But so the last Wednesday of every month, and that will be next Wednesday night, as it happens, March the 26th, will be a meditation teaching and practice check-in. And I'm going to be out of town next week, so it'll be Radley who'll be here on her own. I think Andrew will be back, so Andrew will be here as well. But that'll be an opportunity to go more deeply into the field of care practice and the very related compassionate presence to feelings practice, which is what you were referring to there, Miranda. That kind of very welcoming way of being present to all our feelings, making space for them in this field of care. So Radley will be here next week for feedback on how your actual meditation practice is going, maybe to lead some meditations and have more discussion. And then the week after, I'll be.
Can I just say, Michael?
Yeah.
I wanted to say that this should really be a check-in, whatever you wanted to ask about meditation.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to ask more about how to settle the body and how to find a kind of a beginning measure of concentration. So, or what to do with your breath, or so I invite all questions about meditation in, and we will also take a little time to meditate together on that day. But I think it's really good to have a meditation clinic, you might say.
Great. And that'll be once a month on the last Wednesday of each month. And then the first Wednesday of each month, so that'll be the following Wednesday, on Wednesday, the 2nd of April. And I'll be back with Andrew and Radley that Wednesday. And that'll be slightly longer because we've found, and actually both the sessions will be slightly longer if needs be, from 7 till 8:30, because we found that often there's a lot to talk about when we really get into hearing the stories about the questions about meditation and the teaching around it, but also the stories from the sit spot can be very, very rich from our past experience. And so we look forward to seeing you next week and the week after, hopefully, and encourage you to in your sit spot practice, in your sense meditation practice, in your field of care practice. We're going to be posting some guided meditations online, so that they'll be available for you if you found it, if you enjoyed this meditation with Radley this evening. We'll be posting a version of that meditation it'll be on the Mindful Heart website. It'll be on the Deep Resilience page at the bottom of the page under resources. You'll find them there. Okay, so
I was just wondering, does anybody still have a question what a sit spot is?
Yeah, I do. I really don't know what you mean by that. I can guess, but I don't know.
who is this?
Susan,
Hi, Susan. Were you here last week?
no.
Okay, so what I'm going to encourage you to do, Susan, is to have a listen to last week's talk, because I talked at length about the sit spot and about the sit spot practice, and the kind of 30-second version is that it is finding somewhere in the natural world that's accessible, that you'd like to spend time in, and encouraging you to spend time in that place on a regular basis in a fairly particular way, which I describe in some detail in last week's talk. So I encourage you, if you're interested, to check that out, and you'll find that talk on the Deep Resilience page on the Mindful Heart website.
Okay, thank you so much. Much appreciation.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're very welcome. Okay, and thank you all so much for being here, and thank those of you, I see 17 of you, I think, have put in phone numbers, and so I'll be adding you all to the WhatsApp group, and you'll be getting, I think the way it works is I'll put in your numbers, and then you'll get an invitation, and you accept it or not if you want to be part of it. So, thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Michael. Good night.
You're very welcome. Thank you all for being here very much.
Michael, don't turn off because you have to first get the emails.
Yeah.
Sit spot. Sorry, I'm lying down, but my sit spot was
hi,
that
Cassandra.
where we met recently in the.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a little grove as you go further down the pathway, and you can just sit in the what's left of a tree, and there's new branches that are coming up from the tree stump that surround you halfway like a crescent, and you can just sit there and nobody really sees you because you're in this like kind of miniature little forest area. I'm not
Sounds
doing a
perfect.
very good job of describing it, but I recommend. I think it's going to become my sit spot, and it reminded me, Michael, of the conversation you had about what would trees tell us.
Oh, yeah. Right.
So,
That's great, Cassandra. Yeah, that's great.
I have my sit spot kind of walking, and there's always this one tree also in